Welcome to Agency Elevated Podcast. This is John and Jeanette Lucero, your hosts for this podcast, where we educate and inform the masses on everything life insurance. If you've been looking for a place to get your education and become better informed about everything life insurance, you are at the right place. As well, we are building a massive team of licensed insurance agents to build the fastest growing life insurance agency in the nation. If you've been looking for a team to join, you are at the right place. Now sit back and enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Agency Elevated Podcast. During this episode, we're actually going to do part 2 of our first series where we talked about a needs analysis with Jeanette and her partner, Joanna. Today, we're actually going to go through the solutions. But before we get started today, I think Jeanette wanted to introduce a special guest that we have in the studio with us today.
Yeah, so if you guys are on Spotify or if you're on YouTube, you will be able to see our special guest. This is Blessed. He is our family dog, although I can't really even call him a dog because he's so much more than that. He's like a child to our family. Anyway, so we introduced him on Rising of the Divine podcast. That's our other podcast. You guys are welcome to head over there and check that one out. And yeah, he comes with us a lot of places, and we're in the studio right now recording, and he looked sad when I was leaving today, so I felt like I needed to bring him. Anyways, he is called a Havanese, and it's the circus dog, in case you're looking at him. And he is the sweetest dog. I mean, if you're on camera, like, seriously, look at this dog. He's just like putty in your hands. He's just so loving and sweet. Anyways, you'll see his little tie that he has on right now. Don't be surprised if he starts going after chewing it. So this is Blessed. He's our family orb of love. Yeah. And I just realized something else that John, another reason that you should head over to Rising of the Divine podcast, because we have a Halloween episode, a special Halloween episode that is a must-see, where we kind of switch roles a little bit with costumes. I don't want to give too much away, but if you head over there, you're going to see that John's name of her character is Joanna, which I just realized you named your character Joanna. So that was kind of interesting.
It must have been already in my mind or something.
Yeah, I think so from this episode, these last two. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and jump into this, but thank you guys for coming back and listening. But if you didn't hear part 1, make sure you go back. We actually went through the first part of this, which is going through the needs analysis. So today what we're going to do, we're going to kind of get into roles, talk through this process. Once we found out the need, we left that appointment, and now we're coming back with some of those solutions. And so we're going to kind of jump back into that. I know Jeanette's here in the studio with me today. Joanna wasn't able to join us. But we're going to kind of go through that. And just as a summary of where we were at before, I have my notes here with me. So what we talked about is we were actually trying to build out a plan for you guys based on what your need was, replacing income, taking care of your mortgage, and some of those different solutions. So part of what our conversation was as we went through this, Jeanette was really concerned about her income being the primary income earner in her household. And Joanna would feel like she needed her income for probably 3 years to really adjust. So we built out a plan to really figure out how to replace that income, how to pay off their mortgage, and how to have some funds set aside for their kids in the event that something should happen. So we really walked away with figuring out that we had a need for about $1 million in life insurance for Jeanette, and somewhere close to about $950,000 of life insurance for Joanna.
I want to go off character or go out of character for a minute, just because the last episode, if, like John said, if you did not watch that one, it's definitely a great prelude to today's episode. But I mainly just want to touch on that. I find this to be valuable because somebody like myself, even though I'm married to John, I've been in the industry for a long time, inadvertently or indirectly, having a needs analysis is the part of the equation that most people avoid. It's like the part of the equation where they procrastinate in getting started in shopping for a life insurance policy and seeing what they can qualify for, what that would look like. So the last episode is where we went through that. It's really important to today's episode, to leading into this.
Well, I think also a big important part of this is that if you are somebody who actually already has life insurance, to really figure out how did you come up with the amount that you have already? Did you actually work with a professional that helped you do a true needs analysis? A lot of times I find that people just have insurance. They don't know how they got that amount.
Through their work.
Through their work or just how it was determined. And so in part 1, we really figured out what the need was for Jeanette and Joanna and their relationship, and then what their budget was. And then we came back today to discuss those solutions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going back into character.
Okay.
My character's name is Jeanette, by the way, which isn't hard to be in character.
Yeah. So, but her partner Joanna was unable to join us today. So,
Which totally sucks because I had a whole character planned for Joanna. So maybe someday she'll get to come on and introduce herself.
well,
Her and her wild, wild west ways.
well, and just like you said too, if you wanted to meet Joanna in a different podcast, check out Rising of the Divine, because there is a Joanna on that one that'll have you laughing.
Yeah, it is a must see. We should link it. We'll link it. We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump back into the role here and kind of so. The way I would start off, then, Jeanette, thank you for taking the time to meet with me again.
You're welcome. It's so good to be here, John.
And really just to kind of figure out some solutions for you today. And so just to recap from our first meeting, as we went through that, you mentioned you and Joanna are both 40 years old, had a mortgage that you have for about $380,000, and that your current debt for both of you is about $62,000. I think that was a combination of some credit cards and some different debts that you had out there. And what was important for Joanna, you mentioned to me, is that she'd be able to replace your income, which is about $243,000 a year, and that she'd want that for about 3 years. So she just felt like she was going to need that time to adjust, to make sure she could take care of the kids.
And she agreed with that for sure.
Good. So that equated to income replacement total of about $750,000. And then you both said, hey, in the event that something happens, you want to leave money for the kids, regardless of if they go to college. That wasn't really your main concern, but having money set aside. And you wanted to fund a place for them for about $500,000, $500,000. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Okay. Recap. And then for Joanna, she was concerned, about that. But for you, you said you probably felt like you wouldn't need as much time to adjust financially. Yeah. Her income was about $113,000 a year, and you wanted to replace her income for probably about a year's time, just for you to have the ability to adjust.
Yes.
Okay. So when we left that first appointment, and with what you told me, I went out and tried to build some solutions for you. You also told me you wanted to work with a budget anywhere between $200 to $500 a month. That's what you felt comfortable with. Has anything changed since our first conversation?
No, it still is under 500.
Okay. So what I've come together for is to really look and say, okay, how do we put this together for you, give you some solutions. And so for the coverage that I'm recommending for you, Jeanette, based on what you told me, is we're going to put together some term insurance. And just as a reminder, the term insurance is the best way it's like temporary insurance. It lasts for a certain length of time. And so we had a mortgage that was outstanding for just under 30 years. Your kids, at their ages, I think you told me your kids were ages 2 and 4. You had one boy and one girl. So probably within the next 15 years, they become adults. You weren't concerned once they became adults of leaving money behind for them as much. And so there's just a certain length of time. So what we did is we built out a plan that you would have term insurance to get you through paying off the mortgage and leaving money for your kids. I'm recommending about $940,000 in term insurance for you. And then for the income, that's something that's kind of there permanently, that you want to have income to be able to replace no matter what if something happens.
Right.
And so that's what we would call a permanent policy. We're going to do something called a universal life policy. And based on your budget, we were trying to replace about $750,000, but in your budget, I think we can get to about $500,000 of that total.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm recommending right at about $1.4 million in coverage for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to structure that, like I said, with part term insurance and part permanent. Any questions on what I've talked about so far?
Not yet.
Okay. So that's what I'm recommending for you. And for you, we're looking at a total of cost of about $337 a month.
Okay.
For your coverage.
Right.
Now for Joanna, being that you didn't feel like you needed her income as much.
Right.
We still want to make sure the mortgage gets paid off for you and that we have the money set aside for the kids. So I'm still recommending $942,000 in term insurance for her. But to replace her income, we're only going to do $115,000 to replace her income.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And that's a permanent need. So because her amount of coverage is a little bit less, we're looking at about $147 a month for the coverage for Joanna.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So all combined, we're looking at giving you the coverage. You're going to have about $1.5 million of coverage for you, just shy of that, and just over $1.1 million of coverage on Joanna.
Okay.
And we can do that for a budget of about $484 a month.
Okay. And tell me, how long is that term again?
So the term length is 30 years.
Okay.
Okay. And so you typically what I recommend
70.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I typically recommend on term insurance is that one of the great benefits with the carriers that I work with is that you have the ability that you can always convert part of that into a permanent plan.
Okay.
One of the situations I always like to talk to my clients about is I had a client at one time, young, probably about your guys' age, 40 years old, perfect health, really healthy. And we started a term insurance policy for her. Lo and behold, about a year into her policy, she got breast cancer. And she did live through the breast cancer and everything was good, but she was no longer able to get insurance. So we were able to convert some of her term insurance into a permanent plan at her current health rating. So she got the preferred rating even on that permanent plan.
Okay.
We'll have the ability to do the same thing for you.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay. So really the next step in the process for us, if you're comfortable with this, is we go through the application process. I know in our first meeting, you were really curious about what does the application process look like? What is that, what's it going to entail? So I want to kind of open up to any questions you had about the application process and what the next steps are.
Well, I mean, one of my questions was how does the payment process? That was one of my questions. I know you didn't mention that yet. And then, yeah, what does that entail? I've heard that you have to have blood work, which Joanna is deathly afraid of needles. Deathly afraid of needles.
Okay. So that question actually comes up a lot. I'm glad you brought that up. So one of the carriers I'm going to work with, they go through what's called accelerated underwriting. So they're going to pull some of your background information that's, interesting enough. A lot of this stuff is public information now. So they go through what's called the Medical Information Bureau. It's kind of a database that looks at any prescription medications you've been on, doctor's notes, doctor visits. That's all information that we can pull from. So they start there. And if they can get enough information to underwrite your application, they won't require a medical exam.
Okay.
But in the event that anything shows up on those reports for either you or Joanna, they may require a medical lab work, which could entail urine sample, blood. And so that could be a possibility. So I always like to tell my clients up front, that is a possibility.
So if I've been diagnosed with ADHD, how would that affect this?
Yeah, so ADHD is typically not something that is underwritten as a risk because it doesn't really increase your chance of mortality or impact that. But if you're on a lot of medications for
What about depression?
So actually, I had a client that I was working with this week, and she has severe depression. And so we definitely disclose that on the application. Some of the questions are a little bit in-depth. They're going to want to make sure that there's been no attempts of suicide or anything that's happened there. If there has been suicide attempts, that could be something that either causes an increase in the rating.
No, there hasn't.
So, but the more, what I tell clients, the more that you're transparent, the better we have in underwriting.
Okay.
So as we go through the application process, we're going to ask detailed questions, doctor's visits, anything that you've really seen a doctor for. The more we disclose, the better the underwriting process can be.
Okay, and how long does that take?
So the next step for us today, if you're happy with where we're at, we'll start the application process. Of course, Joanna's not here, so we can do her application over the phone. That's one thing that's really nice. We can do electronic
She doesn't
signature.
ever have to be here?
Nope, we can do everything
because she's probably not going to be able to make it.
Yeah, we'll find a time that she's available. We can do it over the phone, get electronic signatures.
Okay.
We take the application. The application process itself takes about 30 minutes per person.
Okay.
We'll go through there. What I typically tell people when you go through the application, have your doctor's information available, have any of your prescription medications so we can list those, as well as your banking information.
Okay.
And that's regarding your question around payment. The great thing about the application process, we do not take any payments at time of submission.
Okay.
We want to make sure that you can go through the underwriting process and that you get approved for what we think you're going to qualify for.
Okay.
Once we get approved, I'll reach back out to you and say, hey, your policy's been approved. This is the underwriting class that you were qualified for. Based on what you've told me up to this point, I'm applying for preferred rates. So if it gets better, we have elite and ultra preferred. Your rates can actually get better. If they change because something showed up, I'll definitely let you know that before we do any payments.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the payment?
No.
Okay. So that's really what the next step is. We'll go through the application process, answer all of those questions, submit it to an underwriter.
Okay.
All we'll know within the next 2 to 3 business days if it's going to require a medical. If it does, I'll reach out to you. We schedule that. It's at no cost to you. They'll either come to your home or to your office, wherever you prefer, or you can go into an actual lab facility and do your lab work if it's required.
Okay. Okay, but it might not be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll typically know.
I'm going to hope it's not.
Yeah. Typically within about 2 to 3 business days, I'll know if it's even required.
Okay.
Once we go through the underwriting process, the entire process takes less than a week typically to get all of the approvals in place for you. Once they're approved, I reach out to both you and Joanna. If you're happy with where we're at, we'll collect all of your first payments and it comes out on a monthly draft.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
So very simple process. Again, part of what the process is, really with the time we spent on the first appointment, which was much longer, is really figuring out your needs analysis. If this situation changes, I review with all of my clients once a year because your needs do change from time to time. We can always change your insurance. We can apply for more down the road, but at least we meet as much of your need as possible. One of the things that had me concerned going through this, based on your budget, we still have an income replacement that was a gap for you. So we'll review if your budget changes or if we get better underwriting and we can save some premium dollars, we may be able to increase the amount.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how much more it would cost us to have that full coverage that we're hoping to have.
Absolutely. So one thing I can do before we actually submit the applications, I can run you another proposal for the increase. It's probably going to be a little bit above that max budget of $500, but at least you'll know. And then if you want to, we can apply for that.
Yeah.
We have the ability to always change the amount before we issue the policy too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important. We might want to do that. Okay.
Okay. So I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. The next step is we'll go through the application process, get those submitted, and see if we can get you placed.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, I thank you for taking the time to meet with me today.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. This is such a nice office too. Is that your wife on the wall? Is that your wife?
Yeah, that's definitely my wife.
Wow, she's stunning. Is it your second wife?
That's actually the second time I've heard that this week. I'm not sure what that says about me.
Is that your second wife, though?
No, it's actually my first wife. She just looks much younger than I do.
She looks so young. Wow. Are those your kids?
Yes.
Wow, all three of those are her kids? Okay.
Okay. Well, kind of jumping out of the role, I just wanted to kind of that's how simple this process really can be. To go through this, and what we talk about, the key is if you're not working with a professional, to figure out really what your need is. And we used kind of, if you go back to the first episode, what we talked about is outstanding debts, what the income is that you want to replace. We talked about your mortgage and then possibility of education. And so I use this as a way to really talk to not only my clients, but also agents that I work with, as a good way to find out what our clients actually need. Because I find a lot of people actually have never sat down and gone through this. So that's kind of how I sum up what we're looking to accomplish in a needs analysis, and then providing solutions, and working with someone like Jeanette mentioned that's been around it for a long time, but really understanding what a needs analysis could look like. So anything you want to add back from your experience going through this process? Because I know we did this as a kind of a scripted thing, but this is probably something that you've never actually sat down and gone through before.
I just want to say that most people think life insurance is much more expensive than it actually ends up being, and that there is absolutely nothing that you can lose by having somebody do a needs analysis with you. I would say somebody that's qualified, somebody that isn't really just looking to write you a policy, somebody that actually is invested in you. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think on top of that too, if you're somebody that's listening to this, or you're an agent, doesn't really matter. If you actually have life insurance today, look at the amount you have and see, does it actually meet what your true need is?
Well, and they might not know that. For them to look at that, I mean, if I went and looked at some of our information right now, I can't say that I would truly understand in depth what I'm looking at. So I do think it is helpful to have somebody help you, even if you call somebody that like a life insurance expert, you call them and you have them look over your current policy. They have nothing to lose by looking over your current policy either, and just helping you. I mean, it is pretty much a fiduciary, how do you say that?
Well, it's a fiduciary responsibility.
Responsibility, that's the word, for them to help you. And so, yeah, you have nothing to lose. It's like the needs analysis is going to help somebody draft up a policy that truly is suited for you, versus, like you said, and we talked about this several times, that a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people end up with life insurance policies through their work that isn't even an accurate type of policy. I mean, we've talked about a story before where somebody had life insurance through work and it didn't, and when something happened, it wasn't what they expected. So you have nothing to lose. That's what I would say. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. I've just to add to what she's saying is I would tell a lot of the people I work with, my prospects and clients, get a second opinion. We'd be more than happy to give you a second opinion, to look over what you have and just have a better understanding. Again, this podcast and the reason we're doing this is all about education and awareness. Understanding what you should expect from your experience, how you can properly insure yourself, and really understanding the entire process. Not only the needs analysis, what the cost could look like, and how to meet those needs. Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys being with us. Kind of a shorter episode today. If you missed episode 1, part 1 of this series, go back and see how we came up with the numbers that we needed for this evaluation, and really how we provided the solutions that we did today. Appreciate you guys being here for the podcast. Again, like Jeanette said, if you want to have a good laugh today, go check out our Rising of the Divine. It came out on October 31st on Halloween. So it'll be probably a week behind when this episode came out to you, but you can go back and check that out.
And we are going to link it, because I think it is definitely worth everybody watching this seeing John in this role. It is definitely worth it. You might be traumatized and scarred like I am and was, but it's worth it. So, and it's all for a good laugh. Like the response that we're getting is, that was so entertaining. I've gotten 3 people just today already saying that was so entertaining. So we'll link it.
Yeah, I actually got my first response this morning was all caps, OMG, funny. I can't believe you did that. So.
Yeah. So go check it out. It's in the show notes. And until next time, right?
Okay. Until next time. Appreciate you guys being here.
Bye, guys.